Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different as I am interviewing the CEO of Timpson's, James Timpson, to a live audience. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoy being in the space with James. Our aim today, James, is to get to know you a bit more, go through your story, and then we're going to really grill you, I think. The entrepreneurs are going to ask a lot of questions. They've been prepared for this. So let's really start with, if you'd like to introduce yourself in terms of who you are, where you're from, and then we'll start from childhood, really. We'll get to know really more about you.
Okay, so we live near Chester, in a place called Manley, which is by Delamere Forest, which I was walking in this morning. And we've got 3 kids. Bede, our eldest, is 25. Patrick is 23. In fact, he's at the Crystal Maze, just down the road from here at the moment, on a Max Spielman area managers conference thing. And then Neve, our daughter, so Bede, our eldest, he works in London and he's joining the business in February. Patrick, the middle one, he's joined the business in September, and Neve, our daughter, has moved to London after university and she's on the Marks and Spencer's grad training programme. And so my wife and I, Rasheen, we live in Cheshire, but the business is based in Wythenshawe. So we're sort of mostly based up here, but because I'm a retailer and I quite like going on holiday, we're sort of here, there and everywhere quite a lot. But that's sort of us. And my dad is the chairman, and he is nearly 81 and he's at the moment on holiday in Cambodia.
With all the other 81-year-olds who are in Cambodia at this time right now. So in terms of where it began and things and the values that were instilled in you, what was family life as a young person being in a very business-orientated family?
Well, let me sort of split that into two. From a family perspective, it was chaotic, right, because my mum was a foster carer. So I was, from the age of 7, I think I was about 7, the first foster children arrived, and that carried on all the way through my childhood. And then when I went to boarding school and bits and pieces, but basically whenever I came home, these kids you'd never met before just turned up. Some would turn up in the middle of the night. So it was always pretty. So some of the foster kids who came to us were very calm and normal. Most weren't. Most were coming from pretty difficult situations. So growing up, we used to live in Wilmslow actually. So then we moved to Alderley Edge, and then we moved over to nearer Tarpley. But wherever we went, the foster children were there. And my mum used to foster quite a lot of babies and things like that. So I would say it was pretty chaotic. So far as business goes, my first memory of business was on Grove Street in Wilmslow. Any of you know Wilmslow? There used to be a Timpson shoe shop. And it was the one, because it was near the office and near where my dad lived, it was where they used to try everything. So it's where they had the first ball pit, the plastic balls all the kids would go because they were trying to push children's shoes. So that was my first ever memory. And my other memory was of going to the office in Wythenshawe, just around, it's now a Lidl or an Aldi's, but in Bagley. And it was so different in those days because this is before my dad was running the business. It was my grandfather running the business. And it was like lots of other businesses at the time, old school. To the extent that they had covered parking spaces. They had 40 covered parking spaces by the front door, literally numbered 1 to 40. And every month, a new list was published, given which the senior management, which was your parking space. But the nearer to number 1 you got, the more senior you were. So some months you were demoted a bit, another They had a commandant who was a retired naval officer guy. I remember him with shiny shoes and his hat and everything. And his job was to raise the company flag on the flagpole in the morning and salute directors and members of the Timpson family. So I remember this little kid, this guy giving me this big salute. I just thought it was ridiculous. And the whole thing was just a different era. They had 4 different types of dining area. They had the warehouse canteen. They had the office buffet for office workers. They had the senior manager's dining room, and then they had the director's dining room. The director's dining room, they had a cheese trolley and sherry and silver service. Well, nowadays, if you go to our office, you can park wherever you want. There's a cobbler cafe, and I queue up with everybody else. And times have changed.
But on that front then, just if your grandfather was still here, and would he be happy with that, the fact that the time has changed, or was that the way that he wanted it to be?
He was a very traditional, conservative man. He was a very nice man. I wouldn't say he was the most dynamic leader. My great-grandfather was that dynamic leader. Right. But my grandfather had the problem, and I wasn't aware of this at the time because I was a little kid, but it was a family business and the shares had been dispersed because he was third generation, and the founder of the business had 6 children, and my great-grandfather, who then took over running the business, he had 12 children. So as you can imagine, the shares got so split up, you could walk past someone on Deansgate and you wouldn't even know they were a fellow shareholder of the business. So there basically was a massive row and tension built up, and then it exploded, and then the business was sold. And then my dad bought it back. So it went through lots of different connotations, but my grandfather was not that kind of I wouldn't describe him as like-minded to you here. He was a very nice man, very well respected, but he was a sort of safe pair of hands, not a hand grenade thrower like we are.
In terms of, great start. In terms of like the social side, you talked about your mum being a foster carer, and I know there's a lot of social entrepreneurs in here today, and maybe online as well. Was there a trigger? Did you ever discuss why your mum decided to do that? Like, what was the reason behind getting that? And I'm sure it affected you as well.
I think there are probably lots of reasons. My dad was away working all the time and running the business, and my mum was at home, and then we all started to go to school, and she was trained as a nanny, a nursery nurse when she was younger, and she just loved kids. And when she was younger, her father died when she was 4 years old, and they were brought up with the generosity of friends and relatives. And she always felt that if she could give back to others, then that's what she wanted to do. So that's really why she did it. I mean, literally, she went to the extreme. I remember once, when I must have been about 12 or something like that. It was do you remember when Benetton, some of you are the age, when Benetton were in, and she had a Benetton tracksuit, which at the time was like, if you had a Benetton tracksuit, you had a few quid. And we were walking through Alderley Edge, and she had a pram with triplets in, she was fostering. And she had my sister, me, Edward, and at the time I had Oliver, who's adopted brother, all walking down the street, and this woman stopped and said, "You must be rich, you got all those kids and a Benetton tracksuit."
It's so good.
So yeah.
So where does your journey go from there? So you talk about obviously boarding school and things like, please let us know, like, kind of where does it go? From essentially being a child, going up through there.
So our education sort of varied depending on our parents' financial situation.
Right.
So we went to some, really smart private schools and some state schools. And at school, I was always basically wanting to run businesses and make money. So I was the one who was flogging stuff, selling whatever I could sell. Even when I was at boarding school, and I went to a place called Uppingham in Rutland. And at the time, there wasn't a shoe repair shop. There is now a shoe repair shop, and it's one of ours. But at the time, there wasn't a shoe repair shop. And I worked out that lots of people needed that. In those days, people wore shoes that needed repairing a lot. And so when people were in chapel and they'd kneel down, you could see the holes in their soles. So then I'll go up to them and say, right, bring those shoes to me in my study, and I'll get them repaired. So then I had a deal with the bursar that he would then charge the parents full whack, but I got 50% colleague discount. So then I would put them in a taxi to Kettering, where I did a deal with the Timpson manager, Georgina in Kettering, and she would repair them and bring them back. So I was just doing the billing. So I actually made loads of money at school by doing shoe repairs while someone else did them. But so I was always really interested in sport, and I was just interested in being busy, and I really like people. So I was really interested in just the people who were a bit different. I was never one of the lads, didn't like that. I liked the people who were just a bit quirky.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of quirky people here, definitely. So in terms of going into the family business, did you know at that age that's kind of what you wanted to do, or was it essentially just loved like making money and the business and entrepreneurial side of it?
So in 1987, my dad sold the shoe retail business. And so then he had 120 shoe repair shops, and it was making a bit of money, had a few other shareholders at the time, and the plan is to build it up, and because the specialist retail was the in thing then, so body shop, tie rack, sock shop. There was even a shop in Peterborough that just sold eggs. So it was, so specialist retailing was in. So the plan was to sort of build and grow and add some other businesses in and then sell that again. And then my mum, I remember, this is what my mum tells me, she told me, my mum died 8 years ago, so this is sort of recollection what she said, that she realised that my dad would be hopeless at being the leader of a public company because he's an entrepreneur, and he wouldn't be good with lots of other business partners either. So the plan was then is not to float, but just to try and buy out the other shareholders and grow. And that really gave me the in into the business, because it's difficult when you've got lots of other shareholders of trying to dictate family members coming in. But from the age of about 14, I was always working in the shop in Northwich in the school holidays because I used to get bored. So I used to like action. So I used to get the train there in the morning and just work in the shop. And I love just, even today, it amazes me that you do something and then someone gives you money and then you put it in a till. I think it's the most wonderful feeling in the world. So I used to love working in the shop in Northwich, and then when I left school, I did a year in the business. I did a gap year thing, and I did probably 9 months. And I was like a sort of a troubleshooter, so they put me in the shops where the sales were bad, and I would just go for it and sell, and see what I could do and work all the hours. And I just loved it. So when I left, even I was at university up in Durham, and because the holidays are like massive, aren't they? So I spent most of the time working in the shops, even in term time, because there were hardly any lectures. I was working in the shops, we had about 5 shops in the northeast then. And then the area manager, that's right, the area manager, Ian, he had a mental breakdown. So I ended up basically running the shops in the northeast whilst trying to do my lectures and things. But when I left university, the plan was that I would go and get a job somewhere else to get some experience, because I wanted to join the family business, but lots of people advised us that it was the right thing to do. So I applied to loads of jobs, didn't get anywhere. It was at the time where it was a recession, it was difficult to get work. And I applied to all the normal stuff. But the only job I could get was as a door-to-door sales rep for Johnson's groups. It was Johnson's the cleaners, but it was their industrial workwear bit. So I ended up in the northeast flogging dust mats, roller towels, industrial uniform, and the thing that controls the amount of flow, amount of water that goes into a men's urinal. So it wasn't very glamorous, but I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought that I loved the people I worked with, and it was also quite convenient because my then girlfriend, now wife, was in the year below me at university in Durham, so I lived up in Newcastle. So actually quite handy socially and everything. And then I did that and I joined the business.
And then joining the business and going into that, so you must be really well known in the Northeast still to this day for being so salesy all the way around there. But in terms of getting into were you looked down on or differently because you were the boss's son? Like, did you ever get treated differently from that perspective?
Yes, you get it both ways. Some people think, okay, it's too easy for you. Here's someone here. I've had to work all the way up, and then you just come in here. And there are other people that try and treat you with kid gloves and roll out the red carpet, which I don't like at all. And I was put into London, and at the time we just bought a business in London, and not putting a too fine a point on it, it was run by a gang of guys who were nicking the money. They were making a lot of money, skimming off the cash every week, and it was all organised. They were very organised. So I was put in there, and I quickly realised there was a problem, because every shop I went to, I'd double the turnover. And I'm not, I can repair shoes and cut keys, but I'm not the best. But the reason why I doubled the turnover was basically putting the money in the till. So I got a lot of resistance. I was followed home, threatening phone calls, all this sort of stuff. It was pretty nasty. And that sort of hardened me up to realise, sometimes business is not as beautiful and as glamorous as we think. There is a dark side to it sometimes. And also, that's where your principles come in. So I did that for 2 years, and I think I earned the respect of my colleagues because I was first in, last out, worked harder than anybody else, and I was prepared to do the dirty stuff.
Wow. And I think so going through that business and going through there is the way to earn that respect. I think that's one of the Timpson's ways that everyone has to go, no matter if you're an area manager or anyone, they've got to go through every you've got to be on the shop floor.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, the only roles that we recruit that are not from colleagues who started off on the shop floor are like IT and finance and property, where we need to recruit specialist skills, but everyone else starts off serving customers, putting the money in the till.
So in terms of Timpson's, I know them as the key cutters because that's where I always go, and my girlfriend knows them as the person to go and get her shoes fixed with. What else do you do at Timpson's? Because I know there's so many things that they do, and how big is Timpson's?
So I was actually adding up the other week. We've got 17 businesses. Some are really, really small. Like, how do we get to 17 businesses? So the main business is Timpson. And we have more Timpson shops and supermarkets than we do on high streets now. So the big growth for us in the last 10 years has been, we call it the pods. Some people call it the little sheds in supermarket car parks, and some of the in-store ones. So Timpson is probably 60% of the group. And then the next biggest business is Max Spielman, which we bought 14 years ago. They're the biggest photo retailer in the country. Then the next one is Johnson's Cleaners, which has always been a bit of our problem child. We've had that about 5 years. We've finally got it sorted. In fact, bizarrely, we were saying before, more people are getting their clothes dry cleaned now because more people are going back to the office. So actually we were 13% up on dry cleaning last week, which is, the whole trend's changed. And then the next business is Snappy Snaps, which is our only franchised business, predominantly franchised, but 80% franchised, and that's mostly London-based. And then the next business is a vending business. And I don't really understand it as much as I should do, because it doesn't really fit into the way we run the business. It's not a people business. It's more of a technology business. So we do photo ID booths in Tesco's and Asda, with the curtain. Those are ours. We do the automated key cutting machines in B&Q Homebase in the range. And then we've got our hospitality business, which is, if any of you go to Anglesey, the Oyster Catcher in Rossniger and the White Eagle in Roscollon. And we've got the Stretton in Warrington, we've got a pub, and we've got 2 hotels in Morzine. If any of you skiers? Any of you go to Morzine? Le Tremplin is about to go under a big refurbishment, so that's ours. And then we've got the barber business, and then we've got property stuff and investment things and that kind of stuff.
Wow, okay. I see a lot of nodded heads here as well. Sean, I'm not sure you are a skier, right? Did you say?
No, just normal Stretton.
Oh, right, okay. But
Stretton Fox, yeah.
No, they're our competition. We're the partridge.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Knows them both, so that's saying something, isn't it?
Yes.
So in terms of that, how do you manage something, from your perspective, how do you manage something so big like that?
You're spinning a lot of plates. And as soon as you have more than one business or more than one shop, there's always one doing better than the other. So what I'm interested in is what's the plan? Because everything can be improved all the time. So all I'm interested in is what's the plan and have we got the right people? But overriding that is we just try and run it. We run all of our different businesses in exactly the same way, which is with one culture. Right. So I think if you're the stronger, the more intense your culture is, and it's consistent across the businesses, they sort of run themselves a bit. And so I see my job as I'll have one day of admin, which you've got to do, writing, do a lot of writing letters to colleagues, doing a lot of condolence cards at the moment, but in the office, wandering around looking for trouble, a couple of days out seeing shops, and a lot of the time I'll go out with an area manager or talking to colleagues. One day a week I'm doing my prison stuff, which I'm sure we'll come on to, and then one day a week, I don't know, something else interesting comes up. But it's not my job to run the businesses, it's my job to find amazing people and let them go on with it, and let them put their personality on the business whilst we have the same culture overriding it. But there are a number of things that we do. One is we don't run out of money. And I'm not, just because we're here, I'm not, but the bank have been brilliant with us. We're probably not your best customer because we don't have any debt, but when COVID happened, you came out of the traps and really helped us because we were in, like lots of businesses, we were in trouble. And fortunately everything's good now, but that was difficult. So I watch the cash, the monthly management accounts, I go through every line. Every quarter I go through every shop's P&L. Every 6 months, I go do in fact I got it next week, a whole property review. So I sit with all the surveyors going through every property, every lease renewal. The reason why retailers go bust is they get their property wrong, because that's the cost that you can't get out of. So I'm sort of all over it, but I'm not. So, but there are certain things I have no knowledge or interest in at all. IT, I never get involved with buying. I never get involved with quite a lot of parts of the engine room of the business. I just believe that my time should be spent dealing with the headline strategy and talking to the colleagues who are on the front line. And if you just stick to those two and let the rest of it work, then that's sort of worked for us anyway.
So then how much flexibility does someone who has a Timpson shop, for example, how much flexibility do they have having their own store? Like what can they and can't they do?
Okay, so people think that our business is really fluffy and everyone gets cuddles every afternoon. You know, we're commercial. We're really, really commercial. But what we've learned is there are certain ways to run a business that means you can actually be even more commercial. And the key to that is by trusting people to do what they think is right. But you've got to have some kind of framework. So our framework is really simple. Within our culture of upside down management, there are 2 rules. One is you put the money in the till, you're honest. And the other is you look the part, which is all around standards. I've never known a great business have poor standards. You just litter in the car park, weeds. For me, like I know this is only 3 months old, but you know the standards here. If these can be kept like this in 5 years' time, that's to me the sign of a really strong business. So you've got to put the money in the till and look the part. So the shop looks nice. You don't smoke in the shop. You don't have the radio on. You don't eat in front of customers, and you don't look scruffy. Basically, the rest you can do whatever you want. So what that means in practice in a Timpson shop, you order whatever stock you want. You do your displays however you want. You decide when you're going to go to the loo and have a break. You can discount the price to whatever you want. So we have a price guide that we don't want colleagues to go over. Sometimes they have to because the job's much more difficult, but they do discounts and deals all the time, and we don't care what that is. And we actually encourage them to give things away for free. But one of the keys to our business is the bonus. So every business needs a drug to motivate people to perform, and ours is the weekly bonus scheme. So the typical Timpson colleague earns about £100 a week in bonus, and it's a formula which is you add up the wages. So we both work in the Arndale Centre, and I'm making the numbers up to make it easy for myself. We're both paid 500 quid a week. You times that by 4.5, which is 2,500, yeah. 2,250, something like that. Anyway, whatever that is, whatever the target is, that sets the target. Anything over that, we share 15% of the sales. So we've got 2 incentives every week. One is to go for it on sales every week. A lot of finance people think monthly targets, quarterly targets. I just think that's wrong. Most people think week to week. And the other is we want to keep the wages as low as possible. So when you go on holiday, I don't want cover. I'll just work the extra hours because I want to earn the bonus. So that's why when you go into our shops, most of our shops only have 1 colleague in, because really they should probably have 2, but they want to make more money. And as long as the standards are good, the customer service is good, and the money's going in the till, we don't care.
But then on culture that you've talked about there, and you're acquiring all these businesses, how do you then get them to fit into your culture when they're coming from, or do you find that quite difficult?
We've learnt, because we've done 23 acquisitions in the last 20 years. Some have gone well, some haven't gone well. But there is a consistent theme, which is to change a culture takes a minimum of 3 years, and it's only after 5 years does it feel that it's normal, it's part of the business. Sometimes you strike lucky and you get a leader in that business who really wants to be part of your culture and it fits with their personality. And if not, they go. So I would say out of the 23 businesses we bought, sold 1 of them. 3 leaders still with us. So what we do is we put the Timpson colleagues into those new businesses. A lot of the time we'll close the head office and stick everything through Timpson House because I don't like different empires and different cost centres. And whenever you buy a business, no one believes, you can go and give lots of talks like this about how wonderful it's going to be and all these amazing things you're going to do. No one believes you until you start spending money. So we've learned, you go in there and literally within weeks you've got to refit a shop or spruce up the canteen in the warehouse or something. Otherwise they don't believe you.
That's so true, and I love that. So in terms of just talking about that and ruthlessness, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk about trying to get rid of people and saying, you know, you're starting a business and you really want as many people to help out as possible. How ruthless have you had to be, and do you find that is that a natural trait of yours now that you have?
I sort of come at it from a moral point of view, which is there's no point in someone doing a job they don't need to do. They might as well be doing a job somewhere that's more productive. So if you've got too many people, you just don't need the people. I think that's what's the point of someone turning up to do that? But when you have someone who's not good enough, as a leader, you fail if you have your great people working alongside people who aren't good enough. I see that as that I failed. So we are really on it when we recruit people whose best isn't good enough for us. And they won't be happy long term if they're just not right for us. So we might as well encourage them to be happy somewhere else.
That makes so much sense. And in terms of how does the actual business run? Who's the most important line? I know I've heard you talk at different things, and you talked about the area managers being some of the most important within the business. Like, if that is so, why is it so important to have them, and it's so important for your business?
So let me just talk you through how. So if we take Timpson shop in the Arndale Centre, we have 45 shops in one area that an area manager looks after. And the area manager will have 3 assistant area managers, which we call ADMs, area development managers. And basically, one of them does sales, going to problem shops, sorting them out. Another one looks after, we call it shit jobs, stock taking, admin, all that sort of stuff. And the other one is the trainer, and they move those roles around quite a bit. So there's 45 shops, sometimes 50 shops in an area. And so the area manager for around here is called Robert. And Robert's been doing the area manager job for about 16 years. And his job is very simple. In April, we do a colleague survey called the Happy Index. And like lots of businesses, I suspect the NatWest one is like hundreds of questions. We just do one, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your area manager or team leader? And that is Robert's job, to make sure he gets a good score in the Happy Index. No one ever gets fired in our business for poor financial results. They only get fired if they don't get a good score in the Happy Index. So he and his area team get a bonus based on the profit of the shops, but we don't really look at that. We look at the Happy Index score. So that's how it works. And because I can show you as many stats as you want. Where we have the happiest colleagues, we make the most amount of money. The unhappiest colleagues, we make the least amount of money. So don't even focus on all the things that try and get your margins up. Just focus on happy colleagues, and then life's just easier.
The power of people-to-people connection, from what you're saying here, is just basically everything. It's the foundation of everything you do and the business, really. Is that what you're trying to say? That culture is really all about people?
Yeah, but you've got to pick the right people.
The right people, absolutely.
Yep.
That's so important. Now, social good. I know from my perspective, I'm completely biased, always want to bring social good into any business that I do. What is the social good that you bring and that's like close to your heart, and where does that lie?
Well, I'm biased because we run a business and we like to think that all the things we do are great. But from an element, we recycle stuff, we repair things, we help the green economy, and I think we put 15,000 tons of carbon back into the environment last year just by repairing watches. In fact, repairing watches is probably because we recycle all the watch batteries. That's the biggest support we do. But I think we offer employment opportunities to people who often would never get that chance. And that's really where we come in, I think. And also, I think we offer a service to communities that's helpful. We're not trying to sell stuff that people don't really want. We do things that people need. That's why we were talking before that when the economy is having an amazing run, we do okay. When the economy has a bad run, we still do okay. But it's just because we're that sort of business. But I think from a social good perspective, it's the way we do our employment.
And that's going through the prison care system. I know a lot of people talk about that, but it's not even the biggest percentage of employees that you have who've come through that system, are they? Like, how does that work, and how do you recruit those people from prisons or different places?
Okay, so let me just probably give you a bit of a timeline. 21 years ago, I was a group like we are here today, and I was invited into Thorncross Prison, which is in Warrington, an open prison. And I thought, it'd be really interesting to go and have a look into a prison. When I got there, it was literally exactly like the boarding school I'd been at. In fact, some of the facilities were better. But the reason I was really interested is my mum, when she was doing the fostering, a lot of the babies she fostered, their mums were in Style prison. So we used to sit outside in the car watching just waiting for my mum to come back. And I was always intrigued what went on. I always felt it was wrong that these little kids weren't with their parents. So I went in there and it was fascinating. And there was this young guy, Matthew, 19 years old, who was my tour guide. And he started to tell me the story that he was in, if any of you ever been to Mr. Smith's nightclub in Warrington? Yeah, lots of you here. So he was in Mr. Smith's nightclub and basically got into a fight over a girl and ended up getting a 3-year sentence. So he couldn't go to university and he thought his life was over. I really liked him. Personality was spot on, the sort of personality we look for. So I offered him a job, gave him my business card, I forgot about it, and then a few months later his mother phoned me, saying Matthew's out tomorrow. You said you'd give him a job, he hasn't found one anywhere else. So Matthew joined us, still with us today. Stockton Heath, Morrison's, working there. Ironically, the shop nearest to the prison. So in some ways he hasn't gone far, but in other ways he's gone very far. And then I thought, oh, he's good. Let me go and get a few more. And I just like the challenge of how you can find these people and help them get that second chance. So probably for about a year, most Friday afternoons I was going around the prisons in the northwest. Did a lot in Forest Bank, a lot in Strangeways here, and over in Liverpool, just walking the wings with the governor, looking for sparky prisoners, sitting in the cells, having a chat. What are the things you want to be doing? Because very few of them had an opportunity when they left. So I probably got about 20. We don't call them. I mean, there are lots of different phrases: ex-offenders, prisoners. We call them foundation colleagues. They joined the Timpson Foundation. So I got about 20 foundation colleagues. And then I told the business what I'd done. Told all the area managers. And the reaction, we're a business that cuts keys, and I'm employing burglars and armed robbers, so it's got a few, but we don't have a marketing department, so that helps. But the reaction was, the people you got are bloody good, go and get me some more. So I sort of knew I was on to a bit of a winner. And then I set a target, let's try and get 50, so we started to spread around the country. Then we opened up some training academies in prisons to train people up before they left, because one of the problems was they lacked confidence. And a bit of imposter syndrome as well about, am I really capable of doing this? Why should I be given this opportunity? So I did a lot of work on that, and then because our business was growing, we just decided to take on more and more people from prison because they were good. They're just really good. We had some problems, but you have some problems with people you don't recruit from prison. And then we started helping other companies employ people from prison. It's sort of gone on from there. So 1 in 9 of our colleagues is someone we first met in prison.
That's social good all over it.
Byron.
Yeah.
And that's so important. I think it's such an important thing to have as any business, to have that kind of social value towards it, but obviously it has to provide value for yourselves as well, which is really important. So in terms of the future, like where does the future go for Timpsons, but also for yourself? Where do you see that for you?
Well, I'm 52 now.
Big future ahead then.
So it's interesting because we're a family business. We don't really have any sort of targets to hit. Everything is based on last year. We never do budgets. We do a forecast for our friends here, because you like to see a forecast, but it's sort of random number generation. We have some principles which we really stick to, which is we always have cash in the bank. I don't like having shops that lose money. We want to have really good happy index scores in April. And we've learned over the years to only acquire businesses where our culture would fit. So let me give you an example around that. 15 years ago, we bought a supplier that made house signs. We sell house signs. It's in Wrexham, really nice business. Made about $1 million a year, supplying B&Q and Homebase and stuff. And we just thought, logical fit, we can make the margin. Anyway, we had no idea how to run a manufacturing business. We got, I think by the time we sold it, it was making $300,000 a year. And there were more conversations around the board table about what we're going to do with this small business we got in Wrexham than anything else. So we just need to make sure that we just keep the values and the culture, and then just not worry too much about what direction we're going to go in. So, for example, we'd love to do some more hospitality venues. We'd like to keep opening. We've got about 30 shops, 30 Timpson shops to open next year. We've got about 5 Snappy Saps to open. We want to do lots of venues. So we've got loads of ideas, things we want to do. But I don't really have when I was younger, I used to have a goal saying, my original goal was, right, I want to make, because when I started in the business, we were making something like 1.4 million a year. Then it's right, we want to make 5. Then when we got to 5, it was 10. And then when it was 10, I was like, oh God, we need to do more, we need to keep going. And then it was 25, did that, and then it was 15, we did that. So I don't really have any more goals at the moment. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is the colleagues I work with are fantastic, and I feel a real responsibility to them to make sure I can fulfill their ambitions as well. Lots of our senior colleagues are quite young, and I want them to have careers with us all the way through, and including our kids as well. But that's an interesting question around family businesses as well, because I was lucky that the business was much smaller when I came in, and so it was easy for me to shine. But I've seen too many family businesses where the family members end up in positions of responsibility when they're actually better people to do that. So one of my principles is, if our kids want to come in the business, they've got to be like twice as good as the person that they're going to take the role from.
Extra pressure.
Yeah. So we don't want to sell the business. We don't want to do all this, because we like it as a family business, and I feel I've got 5,000 colleagues, and I genuinely feel that they're part of our family.
In terms of the way that you think the market's going to go into the future, and like retail as traditional retail where people come in and do everything, how do you see that going into the future? Do you feel like actually you're safe because it's always usually in the heart of the community?
Our shops?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a big advantage with the supermarket sites is that you get the same customers coming in every week. So it's a really steady flow. So our shops in the high streets, on average, make a lot more profit, but we've got more shops on the in the supermarkets, and they're just steadier. I think there are always high streets and town centres that are doing badly, and there are always others that are doing well. Our average rent is coming down by 30% still, so the market is still changing quite a lot. In fact, our rent in Deansgate has just come down quite a bit. But where I think the changes will be in the use of technology to reduce the back end costs. So, for example, we have lots of colleagues phoning in our key centre to say, customers brought this key in, which blank do I use? Well, AI is really easy to do on that sort of stuff. Customer care, some of that sort of. So I can see costs coming out, but I think that the increase in the national minimum wage, we pay above the national minimum wage, but obviously the increases affect us all. I think as that keeps going up, that causes businesses like ours more problems, because when you've got one person in a shop, you can't have less than one person in a shop. So it's a case of how we manage our pricing compared to our wage cost is 35% of sales.
Wow, okay. So in terms of the entrepreneurs and the way that people are here, how do you support people to, what do you say the key values of being an entrepreneur are? The people who run your own shops, and also for the people here, like, what are the things that you look for in you have to have those traits to be an entrepreneur, or a positive traits?
People who like asking questions. That's what I like, because they want to know why. They ask the question why. They don't tell you what they know. They're inquisitive all the time. I like people who work hard. I like people who are kind to others. I like people who recognise that little things really matter to people. So if I was to go to if I go to the Max Spielman in Piccadilly, which by the way is our most profitable shop in the whole group, the one on the corner by Alison runs that. She's amazing. Whenever I go there, she always tells me off because she doesn't let me serve a customer there because I get it wrong. That if you were to look at how that is run, and if you were to talk to Alison, if she was to say that the loo downstairs isn't working, or I phoned up the warehouse 3 times for new light bulbs and they haven't arrived, that is really important to Alison. The reason why leaders fail in our business is because they don't do what they say they're going to do. And it's those little things that really matter. Overtime payments, make sure those go through. Someone's asked for a day off next week to go to a funeral, you need to get that right. So I think it's understanding that the little things really matter to people, and just being kind.
And it's so simple. You're not talking about having to know all about accounting or anything like this. It's kindness and caring about people. It's something that I didn't expect. So fair play, James. I'm absolutely loving this. I actually might have a chance being an entrepreneur in this case. To be as kind as people as possible.
I think one of the other things that is easily overlooked is we're dealing with problems all day long, problems and opportunities, and the best way to solve them is just to ask the colleagues that do that job all the time. So if we want to increase the sale, so car keys is a big thing for us at the moment. We're doing loads of work on car keys. There's no point in me speaking to a supplier about car keys, really, because they'll just try and flog me the stuff that they want to flog me. The best thing is to go and speak to, so we've got 6 colleagues who wake up in the morning super excited about car keys. Like, I know it's, and I can find you 6 colleagues who are super excited about engraving pet tags or something else, but we know who they are. You get them in a room and say, right, magic wand, what are all the things we need to do to increase sales? They'll tell you. So just do that. It makes it a lot easier. You don't need consultants, you don't need all this sort of stuff. Just ask the people who do it. And a lot of the time it's cheap, it's practical, it improves efficiency, and they know they're listened to. And when they're listened to, they will become even more passionate. So Scott, who runs the Timpson pod at Chichester Tesco, is so obsessed with car keys. He sent me a message yesterday. He's even bought his own machine off the internet in Korea because he thinks that may help him do BMW keys. So anyway, I've sent him the money, 350 quid. But the answers are not found in the boardroom. The answers are found on the front line.
So we talked about so many things in terms of how great Timpsons are and what you're doing, but what are some of the problems? Some of the things the way you think, you know what, we could do that better?
Oh, problems all day long. We had a complaint last week. I have a team that the customer care team, basically deal with customer complaints, and so we cut keys that don't work. We develop photos that aren't right. Like all businesses, we fail. So we had this complaint last week that a customer went into one of our dry cleaning shops in Leeds, and no one was there. They kept ringing the bell, no one was there, making a noise, no one was there. So they went round the back because they needed to pick up their suit for work, and they found the colleague asleep in a bed at the back of the shop. So we don't get things right. The thing where we get things wrong the most is when we recruit people we shouldn't have recruited. And also when we let people, so people leave us for 2 reasons. One is because we're quite happy for them to go, and the other is we're not happy for them to go. And if we're not happy for them to go, they sort of fire us. And they fire us because either the job wasn't what we told them it would be, or we haven't allowed them to be themselves, and we've let them down. So failures, people leaving, customer complaints on that sort of level. It's quite interesting. So with the shops we opened, I've owned hundreds of shops over the years. You never remember the ones that do well, you always remember the problems. And so I think as an entrepreneur, it's quite good to be glass half empty. It's tempting to think everything's going to be brilliant, but actually, you've got to know where your problems are. So that's my view. One of the things that always concerns me as well is when you're doing big projects is cost overruns, because you have your budget figure of 100 grand. It's never 100 grand, and it's how you manage that process.
Just out of curiosity, what is your staff turnover like?
Our colleague turnover.
Colleague turnover.
Yeah. If you take out the colleagues who retire or don't pass their 16-week trial period, it's 7.9%, which for retail is really low. And I probably don't want it to be much lower than that. One of the problems we have is that when we recruit someone, working in a shop is hard work, and serving the public is not for everybody. So that's why we get that churn in the first 16 weeks.
That makes so much sense. So in terms of, you support loads of people, in terms of employees, but also the shops and everyone within that. Who supports you? So who do you have within your team that supports you?
Well, I've got a wonderful family. I've got my dad, and my dad is brilliant. I mean, he's slightly eccentric, but we've never disagreed. If there's something we weren't sure about and I wanted to do, he would just say, fine, have a go. And if it works, great, and if it doesn't work, you've learnt a lesson. And I think that was a really positive thing for me, because I was never fearful of having a go at things. And I've got a big network of business friends. So I'm in a thing called YPO, Young President. I'm 52, but I'm in Young Presidents Organisation. So it's a group of entrepreneurs. In fact, we met up yesterday, and we meet up in term time every month, and we go on a sort of a retreat once a year is a bit of a jolly, and that is where I've learned so much about business and how people do it, and what are the rules, what are the sort of unsaid rules of business, how it works. Yeah.
Is your dad still involved in the business?
Very, not much. He'll do the odd day going around shops, pop into the office for half a day.
Okay.
But there's certain areas that he still does. He does all the communication stuff, so he's involved with the newsletter. Up until 2 years ago, he was writing the training manuals, so he likes doing that sort of stuff.
Okay. Amazing.
But no, he's not really in the business.
So he's not, and when the future for you, do you see yourself kind of doing that kind of thing and always having at least doing something within the business, or do you get retirement? Is there a retirement age? When
you're an entrepreneur, it's impossible to retire. Because I mean, all my friends who have been entrepreneurs, they may have sold their business, but when you ask them, what have you been doing at the moment? They're investing in this, they're backing that person. They just cannot stop. So I'm not going to sort of kid myself that I just love business. I think it's really, really interesting, but I also have lots of other interests as well. And so I think it's a case of just getting the balance right.
What is it that you love so much about it, about business, that you've had from such a young age?
I'm competitive, so I want to have the best shop on the high street. I just enjoy the game. I find it absolutely fascinating. Coming back to this point of why will a customer come into your shop and give you money for something? I find it amazing. So that's what I find. And also, there are just still more ideas. I know there are more ideas out there, and I want to keep looking for them. I'm reading a book at the moment on enterprise rent-a-car, and one of the things I found fascinating, it's a really small point. When they have more than 120 cars in a depot, they open another depot. That's the number they've learned, that's the number that works. So, and it's always, you're always learning. But I think the more time I spend in other businesses, the more I can bring back to our business. Because our business doesn't change so much, if you look at our shops, they're not fundamentally very different from 20 years ago, because we do the same kind of things. But it's easy, I find it easier to learn more from other businesses than I do our own.
And the culture is completely different from 20 years ago, though.
Very different.
Yeah, amazing. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We do have questions, so please get your questions ready. And that's online as well. So thank you so much for spending this time with me as well. I've really enjoyed it. And yes, if anyone has any questions, please do put your hand up. Jess will have a microphone for the people who are in here. I'll be looking for questions online as well that are coming through now. So Jess, would you like to essentially just go to whoever's got their hand up and we can just go from there?
Thanks a lot, James. That was really fascinating. First of all, but you mentioned the key cutting machines in B&Q and other areas for growth in like back office processes and stuff. But where do you see technology and more specifically automation and AI playing a role in expanding the business in the next few years?
More in the back office, not in the front line.
Just generally, yeah, anywhere.
So I would say more just taking process out, where you need to employ people to do process. I much prefer, if they don't need to be doing that job, we can get another job for them to do. But so far as our shops go, I don't think you can really change the fact that we offer personal service. You can spend a fortune on a machine that presses shirts really quickly, but actually when you look at the cost of doing it compared to the cost of just having a really well engaged, enthusiastic, well-trained colleague doing it, I'll stick with people. So we've always been quite lucky that technology doesn't really impact us. I think one of the biggest impacts has been the switch to online. So in our photo businesses, our biggest competitor is Photobox and Snapfish. So it's how we differentiate ourselves. And we've invested a lot in the actual customer journey bit and the all of the sort of clever websites and everything. But our game is order online, collect in store, because again you get that personal service, and we try and differentiate ourselves because we have real people who do real things, and I want to keep doing that. But I'm also, I went to the Amazon warehouse, the one by the airport, by Manchester Airport. I mean, it's vast. I saw the robots going around. That's pretty scary. But you can't repair a shoe with a robot. Well, you can't yet.
Does that answer your question, Jaden?
Yeah.
Amazing. Just as a reminder, anyone online, please do submit your questions via the online opportunity. I've been asked to remind you.
But but we will, with our vending machines, we will put more and more into the shops, into the supermarkets where we can't open up a full shop. So I do see, in our photo vending machines, so there's still angles for that.
Do you see like the future where you might have shoe repairing machines like you have the key fitting ones as well?
So I'll, for our online people. So do I see an automated shoe repair machine? No, it is really tricky to do. Even when you go to a shoe factory, it's not really that automated.
Hi, thank you. My name's Sophie, and I firstly just wanted to say thank you for calling everybody colleagues, because I think that's a small thing that does make a really big difference. And my question is, when you are a small business, i.e. 2 or 3 people, do you have any tips or tricks for building that workplace culture, and how do you then scale that to 5,000 colleagues?
The reason why we use the word colleague is I don't believe anybody's more important than anybody else. And the word staff sort of implies that there's a hierarchy. So that's why we use the word colleague. In fact, when we introduced it 15 years ago, we had a swear box. When anybody said staff, they had to put £1 in the swear box. And people quickly learn. I don't think having a business with 5,000 colleagues or 5, you can still run it exactly the same way. And it's setting out what your stall is. And I had an email off, and it was a tweet through from someone over in Yorkshire, and they basically copied our model. And there are 7 people in there. I think it's a marketing business. They've got 7 colleagues. So they don't. We have 18 holiday homes where colleagues can go on a free holiday. They don't have holiday homes, but what the boss does is when they book their holiday in Tenerife for 2 weeks in the summer, they actually booked it for a month in the summer, and gave those 2 weeks for two of their other colleagues to have a week each. For everything from, you can bring your dog into the office, that you can do. So in simple terms, the flexibility that you would want to run your life and your business by, offer it to everybody else in the business. But for example, we do loans to colleagues. So we give money to people who are having a difficult financial time. Could be a loan, could be a gift. We do dreams come true. Everyone gets their birthday off. That's a simple one. Give everyone their birthday off as an extra day off paid. When you have your kids have the first day at school, another day off free. So it's all those sort of acts of kindness and bits that support them outside of work, which I think you may see it as a cost, but I can prove to you that the more things like that you do, the actual more money you will save.
Great question. Just as one of the online questions we've got, so it's been such a fantastic and inspirational insight. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. That's great. Have you considered doing work with young people in schools and colleges to inspire the next generation?
Yeah, we do quite a bit of that actually. We do quite a lot of work experience. We love it when it's normally in the sort of May, June, isn't it? When the schools are coming out, they do the work experience. We love that because I think lots of people have no idea about work, and it just gives them that confidence of being out and about. We work with the Northwest Academy Trust, which is 13 schools around the Northwest, so we do a lot with them. But one of the problems that we found in our business is that certainly men under the age of 25 don't stay with us. Testosterone in a man peaks at 24, and if you look at crime rates and everything, it's 24, 25 is like the age. So we don't really look to recruit lots of young people from school. Saying that, we do have in fact, Sid, who runs a Timpson business, he joined us when he was 12 as a part-timer on a Saturday in Brixton, because there was quite a lot of, it was quite a rough area and we needed a bit of beef in the shop. So Sid joined as a 12-year-old.
So recruited a 12-year-old.
Yeah. But I think it's important that you're an outward-looking business. Some of our colleagues love working with schools, so it's important that we give them the time to do that. Others have no interest, so I don't want to force them to do it if they don't want to.
Makes sense. Perfect.
Yeah, so really, really interesting, James. Great to hear you talk. And one of the things that really stuck out for me was just doing simple things well. 2 other things that stuck out is you've grown as large as you have. You don't have a marketing department or any debt. I think that's a real testament to just simple things, doing simple things right. and I'm just wondering how you came up with that philosophy in a world that's constantly trying to overcomplicate things. That's my question.
I think because I'm commercial, I've worked out that the less things you do, the more money you make. So just keep it really simple. It's like our, let me think of an example. With property. So when you're deciding which property to take, I've got a number of options. I could pay consultants, I could do lots of appraisals, I could have the finance team running all these numbers, or I could get in my car and go and stand outside that shop and say yes or no. So just stand outside the shop and say yes or no. I think when it comes to financial complication, I see lots of businesses, certainly if I speak to colleagues in the public sector at the Ministry of Justice, they spend half their life in budget meetings, which is, I understand why some organisations need budgets, but actually just get on and run the business and trade. And I also see so many businesses complicate things because of weak HR. They don't address the problem people, so then they end up having to put more and more processes in place to try and control the behaviour of some difficult people. And most businesses that we take on, I would say 20% of the colleagues are in that problem colleague category. Another problem that businesses have is they chase the last 2 or 3% of sales. And to get that last 2 to 3%, they add in loads of complexity. Let me give you one example. B&M and Sainsbury's make the same amount of money. Sainsbury's employs 5 times as many people. So you've got 5 times as many people working to make the same amount of money. Who's right, who's wrong? But what Sainsbury's do is they chase every last penny. They want you to get your trolley filled as much as possible, whereas B&M want you in, want you out. Keep it as simple as possible, and they make the money.
Yeah, at the back there.
I love the way you describe the feeling of kind of taking money and someone someone doing something for you and you receiving that. And obviously the length that Timpson's has existed proves that you give people real service to give you the money that they do. How do you spend any time looking at how future technology might affect Timpson's? Obviously it's been around for so long and you give people a real reason to do business with you. With the increase of digital technology such as like the Latch app, Yale's digital keys, do you spend any time from a holistic point of view in your position looking at how Timpson might need to adapt for the future, given the fact you mentioned being a family business, you want it to kind of keep going? Is that something that you look at from Timpson's, or is that one of the reasons why you look to buy up other businesses in different areas?
Don't spend a lot of time looking at it, because my theory is I want to be a follower, not a leader when it comes to change. The leaders lose the money. The followers are the ones that pick up the pieces, and you still may lose a bit, but I much prefer to be a follower. But what we'll do is, so let me give you an example. Trainer cleaning. Some of you are wearing some very smart sneakers, as the Americans call them. And it's quite a big business. If you go to China, it's a massive business, cleaning trainers and stuff. And if you want to buy 1,000 machines, it would cost me, I don't know, £5 million. Then we just buy 2. So we've got one in the Arndale Centre and one in Selfridges in London. Leave for the colleagues, say, you decide what you're going to charge, how you're going to display it. In 6 months' time, tell me how much money you've taken. And we've proven that actually they don't make money. So rather than piling in, I much prefer just to put my toe in the water and try something. And if it works, then I'll do more and more and more. If it doesn't work, we won't.
That's so interesting, because you often think first to market is such a key thing, but it's also, what you're saying here is also biggest risk. Because being a follower, you can literally just get in there and do it as you just explained. Love that.
Let me give you an example on photo booths. So photo booths are, it's a pretty boring business, really. You build this booth, you put it in a supermarket, someone comes every 2 weeks, cleans it, takes the money out, that's it. But we didn't know how to, when we decided we want to go into this business, we thought, well, we need to design it. So I said, let's go on eBay. So on eBay, we bought a photo booth from Holland, shipped it over, the guy stripped it down, and we said, let's just basically copy it. We'll do a few changes so we don't get into trouble. Much easier. rather than having a whole design team and all this. Just copy what other people do, but do it better.
Love that.
Thank you. Hiya, James. You said that you give colleague weekly bonuses, which I love the idea of. And was it taking the wage and multiplying by 4.5? First of all, where did the 4.5 come from? And second of all, it was 15% of total sales within the shop after that number. Where did the 15% come from? And if there was more than, let's say, 3 or 4 employees, is it per person or as a whole?
Okay, so my dad invented it. He's a genius on this sort of stuff. You should only be paying out a bonus when you're making a profit. I don't think you should be paying a bonus when you're losing money. So basically, the reason why the 4.5 is that sort of sets a rough level over that point you're making money. So it becomes a profit share. So if the two of us are working in a shop and we add up our wages and the bonus pot comes to £200 and we've worked exactly the same number of hours, we don't split it 50-50. It's split on the number of skills we have. So if you have twice as many skills that I have, you'll get 2/3 of the bonus and I'll get 1/3. So there's a real incentive to have more skills, but it doesn't cost us any more. It's just how you slice up the cake. So one of our biggest bonus earners is our colleague, is our manager in the Timpson Arndale Centre, and she's probably getting £400 a week, £500 a week. But there's no cap to it. And what you find in some businesses, what they do, if they think people are earning too much bonus, they change the scheme. They've never changed the scheme, because otherwise people don't trust it and people get pissed off. Yeah.
Yeah, it proves it works as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a question online here. The question is, have you got any advice for someone starting at Timpson's?
Let's assume they're starting in a shop.
Yeah.
Ask lots of questions. Have a go. Make mistakes. Put your hand up when you made mistakes and ask more questions. And 2 really simple things. When you haven't got anything to do, clean the shop and arrive early, because simple things work.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Now there's some other hands up, weren't there? Yes, Jess, if you'd like to just go to...
Thanks again. It's been really insightful. So many questions around it in retail and retailing as well online. I guess that's the question. Do you see the place for online always a physical presence in retail, or does it depend on the model of the business?
I think COVID has, whilst in some ways it helped online, it's also caused lots of problems, because a number of businesses overexpanded because people couldn't go to the shops. I think it's a hybrid model. You know, if you look at some of the main high street retailers, see how much money they make out of their stores. They make a huge amount of money out of physical retail, and the online is the icing on the cake. I think it's about the sector you're in. I think it's about the brand you have, and I think it's about the story that you tell. But you've got to make money, and it's about, you know, I have a friend who's a fitness trainer, and whenever you see him, he's messing around with his website. And I asked him the other day how much money he takes on the website. Well, if I do this, then I'll start taking some money. So I just think you need to keep it really simple and make sure you don't spend loads of money on the back end of online. It worries me how much you can spend on marketing online, because it's a drug. It's a bit like, I'm never fit enough. If you spoke to Usain Bolt, he'd say, you know, I could have gone faster. But I do think the high street retail will come back where you are selling an experience. Who wants to buy a £5,000 suit online? They want the experience. They want, you know, so. But I think there's a happy medium. But I think you've just got to get your cost base in line, because there's no point subsidising people buying your product. I think a lot of it's about storytelling.
If there's one thing to look at, if you're going to open a shop, we're thinking of it potentially, what would be your key factor?
A lease is for life, not just for Christmas. You want to find a landlord who believes in you and gives you the flexibility that if it doesn't work, you can get out. And your shop fit, your challenge should be, is how can I fit out this shop for as little amount as possible, and you because I've seen too many people spend a fortune on websites and on everything else, including shop fits. There are always shops that are closing around. Buy their stuff, buy their fittings. Tills. So if you go into one of our shops, our tills are 400 quid. They're basically Fisher Price tills. It's like a calculator with a till drawer. But people spend so much time and effort. Let me give you another example. So I'm digressing here. We did a franchise in China about 7 years ago. Really nice people. They're going to do Timpson in China, talking big numbers. So we helped them open up 2 shops. We sort of talked them through our whole process. And when I went out there to cut the ribbon, they'd had a till. They put this whole process in place, which was, is the customer male or female? If they're bringing shoes, are they brown shoes or black shoes, high heels? We don't care. We just have one button, shoe repairs. Because the most important thing in our business is, do we have great colleagues in the shop who are happy and the standards are good, and then the data comes. You don't need that kind of data. So keep it really simple and keep it cheap. Absolutely love that. And don't sign a lease.
Please, because she's so keen, she has to ask a question.
Just on that point, how do you, recruit landlords? How do you know that a landlord's good and that's one that you know would fit?
So there are certain landlords we will not deal with because we don't share their values. And in retail, we all know who they are. They're not nice people to deal with. And I've known some people who've worked there and it's broken some of them. Really nice people, done their surveying courses and they're broken by it. So I just don't deal with landlords we don't like. It's quite interesting, we've got 2 landlords who won't let us do monthly rents. So as soon as the lease is up, we're closing them and going to open up around the corner. Because it's a bit like with our suppliers. I won't deal with suppliers who we don't like. I'm happy for them to make money out of us. If we're making the money that we're happy to make, that's fine. But we don't deal with people we don't like, that don't share our values.
Once again, very simple, like you talked about earlier, like really simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your talk. I found it very inspiring. I think it's really nice that you've been so honest and open, because often you come to these talks and they don't talk about the failures and the difficult times as well. So my question is, you mentioned about you don't like shops that lose money. So you seem very passionate about people and about many properties. So when it isn't working, that's with people or property, how do you cope with that mentally? And what do you do, and when do you decide to make that decision to stop?
Okay, so there are 2 reasons why a shop's losing money. It's either badly run or in the wrong spot. Sometimes it could be both. So what we do is we hate closing shops. So let me go back one step. I have a moral problem, someone working really hard in a shop that loses money. That's not what work should be about. Work should be about contributing. So that's my one side. So what we do is, say there's a shop in Exeter, just as an Exeter last week, to make it up. We were in Exeter last week and we've got a shop losing money. What we'll do is, you're the manager of that shop, we'll take you out and put a superstar manager in for 6 weeks and see what happens to the sales. Because most of the time, the reason why a shop doesn't perform is because we haven't got a great manager. If you were to speak to Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, Sainsbury's and Asda and say, what's the easiest way to increase profit in the business? They'll say, put a great manager in every store. It's the same for us. If we could wave a magic wand and have our best manager in every shop, we'd still make 50% more profit. So it mostly comes down to people. So if we put a superstar manager in there for 6 weeks and it still doesn't increase the sales, then we'll look to try and get out of it. But it's last resort. One of the things we like doing, though, is when we've got 2 shops in a town centre, and the lease is up in one, we may close that one to put all the sales through one. So that's no one's fault. It may even be making money, but we'll do that to make even more money.
Would you then reintegrate the staff from that closed shop into another shop or somewhere else, or is that?
Yeah, we'll move them around. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Colleagues.
Some things take time. There was other hands. Yes.
So you've mentioned already that you don't have a marketing team. Can you tell us? Tell us a bit more about that and how that works for you, and if you think you could do that, bringing it in today?
So we don't.
You're a household name now.
Sorry.
Because obviously you're a household name now. So if you were starting the business from scratch now, do you think that's still something you'd do?
Yeah, it's just money we don't need to spend. So we don't have a marketing team. We don't have a PR department. We don't have a comms team. Twitter, the Timpson Twitter thing, I do, and like sometimes I think, oh shit, I haven't done one for a week, so I better do one. Think of something interesting. When it comes to when you go to a Timpson shop, they've got graphics in the shop. They haven't changed in 4 years. No one's noticed. So they're not relevant. It's not like Greg's. I think Greg's are brilliant. Greg's is a business I really admire. You know, they've got all the big graphics. The sort of, you know, they'll have a whole team doing that, but they need to because that's their kind of business. When you go into one of our shops, you won't really notice that if it's a bit dirty. You won't really remember whether any of the lights weren't on. You may remember roughly what the price was, but you will remember how good the person was who served you. So we just focus on that. And we have Alexia who does the graphics sometimes when we need to do graphics, but I can't remember the last time I asked her to do any. And in Max Spielman, Sue, who runs the Max Spielman business, she decides what graphics she wants. So she's basically our marketing person, as well as running the business.
Any other? Yes.
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay.
You mentioned that you wouldn't open up a shop if it didn't follow the company culture. What is the company culture that you'd follow?
We wouldn't buy a business.
Buy a business, sorry, rather than a shop.
It's got to be a business where the leaders are people who get it, who get the fact that you can be kind to people, you can trust people, and you can have loads of fun. I think business is great fun. It's fascinating. But I don't like the ones where it's all about process, top down, telling people what to do, command and control, bully boy type culture, which you still see quite a lot, unfortunately. It's never going to work for us. So it's a case of, you know, a lot of businesses we've taken on, we've actually taken on because they've gone bust. Which in some ways is hard work because you've got to spend lots of money to sort them out, but in some ways is really good because their culture has failed and it's much easier to integrate your culture, especially when you close their head office and do that. But it's a case of just having a nose for it.
You love business, and I'm sure we all love business because the business may be ours. Thanks. However, how do you get, for example, an area manager or a store manager to love the business like it's theirs, because essentially they're still on a wage and it's still they're working for somebody else rather than the business actually being theirs?
So our area managers, as we said before, have been promoted up all the way through the business. And so Robert, I spoke about Robert before, who runs the Manchester area. He can do whatever he wants. No one asks him where he is. No one asks him how many holidays he has. No one asks him anything. We just ask him how he does in the Happy Index every year. But it's his job to know his people, to know his colleagues. And if you're a people person, there's nothing more addictive than working with really nice people and trying to help them to be their best. So I think if you recruit the right people, they just really enjoy the job. We're also good at over-promoting people. I'm sure we've all over-promoted people in the past, and that's tough because that's when you have to have those difficult conversations. Because they may have performed in another job, but then when you promote them and it all goes wrong, and that's actually your fault, not their fault. So those are the tough decisions to be made sometimes.
Yes, Jess, please do ask your question.
Thank you. So James, as entrepreneurs, we're often focusing on what we haven't yet achieved. So we spend a lot of time on the accelerator reflecting and considering recent highlights and wins. So question to you is, what's been a recent proud moment for you in the business?
We've opened a shop in Matlock.
I'm from Chesterfield.
Oh, there you go. We've opened a shop in Matlock Sainsbury's, and it's been the best opening we've ever done. Normally you'd think it'd be, in a big, in the Arndale Centre or something. No, Matlock. So I was really pleased about that. But what I'm most pleased about is when you meet a colleague who's joined the business and they're really happy. That gives me the most satisfaction. One of the things I was going to mention is around goal setting for entrepreneurs. We're not very good on discipline and structure. And one of the things that I've learned is it's really important to write down your goals every year, and just 3. And they could be personal goals as well as business goals. But I think if you don't write down what your goals are, and these need to be sensible things, they can't be sort of pie in the sky but never achievable. Just write down your goals and keep looking at them every week.
How many of our founders have goals?
Thanks, James. My question's particularly around the recruitment from prisons. Share a little bit of that work as well. So I'm interested to kind of understand when someone's transitioning from prison, it's a difficult transition back into society, let alone the workplace. So how do you support that? How do you support that person moving from a prison back into society and into employment? 3 big things. So yeah, interested to find out what you do there.
When someone leaves prison, it is a difficult transition on many different levels. But they need 3 things. They need a job, preferably a full-time job. They need somewhere to live and someone to look out for them or love them even better. And we're in the job business, but we've recognised that to make the job work, we often have to help out with the other things, especially housing. So housing is a real problem. So we basically pay rent deposits, we help people get going, we deal with probation, we try and massage everything, so it's a smooth landing for them. But it's not just about having those practical things like a job and somewhere to live. It's the emotional damage that someone has of serving a sentence and of failing society, and putting them and getting their confidence back up. So what we find with someone who joins us from prison, they're normally incredibly reliable, incredibly honest. They'll stay with us forever because they don't think they can get a job often elsewhere. But they often lack confidence, imposter syndrome, and there's this feeling that everything's going to go wrong again. So it's our job to try and give them that mental strength, and we do that by throwing them into the deep end. When I first started recruiting people from prison, I was probably a bit too soft. I was even, looked after someone's dog for 6 months because he couldn't afford the kennels. I do all this sort of different things. But you've got to be quite tough with them because they're used to structure. And if you're too, this may sound an anomaly, if you're too kind to them, it doesn't feel right to them. They're used to rules and process. So we have to manage it. But because there are so many people in our business who come from prison, they're often working alongside someone who's shared that experience, which helps. And then I have a colleague called Darren Burns, who is my foundation ambassador. So he's going around prisons all the time, recruiting and doing the arm around the shoulder bit. Sometimes we get it wrong, but we've learned that the best way to do it is to recruit someone when they're still in prison and they come out every day and work in the shops. So we've actually got 25, 30 shops being run by people who are still in prison. They literally go back to prison every night. And that transition is we've got a 98% success rate. The problem is when someone leaves prison and says, I really need a month off just to do whatever. Disaster. You leave prison today, you start working for us tomorrow.
Thank you.
To answer your question, Sean. Yes, Caroline.
Thank you. My question relates to a point you were making a minute ago. So in terms of being an entrepreneur, you obviously love being an entrepreneur and the excitement and the adrenaline that gives. But it's very different from being an entrepreneur to running a business. And, have you got any advice to give? It's different because you're a family business, but have you got any advice around, as an entrepreneur, deciding when you are not the right person to run that business, or the skills that you either have to develop that are not your fortes and your strengths? I'm just interested in your insight around that.
So the best guide is in certain parts of the business, when your eyes just glaze over, or you're in a meeting and you start drifting off. That's when you know that bit's not for you. So let me give you some examples. So if we were to take IT, so I force myself to have a meeting with Paul once a month, our IT director. And only half an hour, because literally after about 10 minutes, I'm drifting off. So I'm not the right person to make decisions on IT. It's my job to make sure that they recruit people who fit our values, and the commercial decisions that they make are correct. So I would sort of use your sort of, do I like that bit of the business? Do I like doing those kind of things? So let me give you another example. When emails come through from the training team, I sort of probably meant to read them every week, but I'm not that interested. But I love the one from the security team. We have a team of 3 security colleagues who go around the shops, because they give me a score out of 5 for every shop they go to of what it was like and everything. So I find that interesting. So yeah, that's probably how I would judge it. But I do think it's important in our business. I don't want loads of entrepreneurs. It'd be a nightmare. People like me, it'd be an absolute nightmare. I mean, me working with me would be a nightmare. So you need people who are very good process systems people, and you understand each other's language.
Yeah, that's my point really, because I'm not one of those people. So when we do that, so
Yeah.
that's really helpful. Thank you.
Got a question online that's come through. How do you stay focused and positive when things are tough, or if you have challenges outside of work which start to impact your time at work?
Okay, I quite like a crisis. I quite like it when things go wrong. So when COVID happened, obviously it was disaster, it was horrendous. We had colleagues die and the whole thing was very, very difficult. But looking back, it was from as a business leader, that's when you're really tested. So day to day, so like, I was actually saying to my wife this week, I've had a really easy week this week. It's been pretty straightforward. Nothing exciting's gone on. But I quite like, entrepreneurs like exciting things, like new things. But you need to be careful. You don't sort of try and create problems. But I think, what was the question again?
So how do you stay focused when things outside of work?
No.
Things outside of work.
I think just the way I answered that question. No. I find prison stuff really easy to focus on, because I'm not the leader. So I do lots of stuff with the Ministry of Justice. I'm doing a review into prison officer training at the moment, which I'm finding really, really interesting. But when it comes to business and being commercial, focus is not good.
And I think the question is really going even deep into more like family life and things. When things happen there, are you able to compartmentalise quite well? Or
I don't think anybody really is. So when my mum died 8 years ago, she was very poorly for 2 years before, and then you realise that actually work is not that important. Just keep the show on the road, and then let's deal with family things. And the first thing I do is in the morning when I go to work is I phone each of the kids. That's I find that that's the most important driver for us. Business is always important, but family comes first.
I love that. How do you prioritise? Just obviously families first, but then how do you prioritise, like whether that's your week, whether what you're doing? How do you do that with all of us juggling so many plates?
So I've learned that I only have something in the diary if I'm really looking forward to it. And it could be a call, it could be whatever. If I'm not interested, not looking forward to it, don't do it. And I've got better at saying no. I've got better at batting things away to the team. So you're asking me about, we were talking about, who was I talking to before? And I said, speak to someone else. Anyway, so I'm much better off at batting things away. Structure my week, I'll always have 1 or 2 days a week going around shops. And when I go around shops, no calls, no meetings, nothing. I'm literally get the first shop before it opens, and I'll keep going until I'm done for the day. When I'm in the office, I like to have no meetings or anything before 10 o'clock in the morning, and I like to get home by 5:30. So I'm an early starter but an early finisher. And meetings, board meetings. So our main board meeting starts at 10. Starts at 10, finishes by 12, and we do 5 of those a year. And most meetings half an hour.
Wow. Just out of curiosity, how do those board meetings look? Is it all talking about finances and talking about...
No. So our main board meeting, so our group board meeting, Paresh, our FD, Paresh and I have worked together for 20 years. He and his team prepare the board pack, and it's about that thick. That's it. And what happens is my dad writes like a 2-pager on his thoughts about the business in the future, so like a couple of discussion points. So we'll start off by talking about that. Then we'll do the minutes of the previous meeting. But what we do with the minutes is all the questions are already answered, because I've seen too many meetings where they then go through every minute. So the minute is, it could be, what is our opening plan for next year? And it'll all be written down there in red ink. This is the opening plan for next year, da, 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 da. So you don't need to discuss it, but you know it's being done. Then we focus on the projects we're working on, and then we'll have a bit of an overview of what's happening in each business, and that's it.
So I think that rounds off. Is that time? I know I could ask questions all day, to be fair. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please leave a comment in the comment section below, and we cannot wait to see you for our next episode.